Just to start off, we wanted to kind of ask, is there a difference between success and winning? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, so we define success is literally defined as achieving one's goals. So we like to balance out both. For us, sometimes winning isn't in the cards for a kid right away, and there could be a lot of different reasons. It's just too early in the competitive grind. They might have some mental blocks, some strategic blocks, even some technical blocks that we have to work on. So we like to have the kids set small goals for themselves and then achieve those. I mean, even just going to a tournament, doing a tournament for the first time is a success for us because it is sometimes really difficult to get a child to want to compete and then get the parent on board as well. So once we get both parties on board, that's a success. We have kids who haven't competed for years and then all of a sudden want to compete. We have kids who win all the time at the locals and then they challenge themselves to a regional. We would consider that a success. The Pan Kids Championships is the toughest tournament for kids in the world. Kids from all over the world come to that tournament. So sometimes the goal for that is just to medal or just to go, just go and experience it. We like to sometimes have kids have a buffer year where it's not so much expected for them to win, but they at least get to go and understand the energy, the level, and how they need to prepare. So obviously we also know as a program we have to produce wins, or we understand the sacrifice as parents to spend a lot of money, time, sacrifice. The child is putting their body through a lot to learn this sport. So we understand that we also have to produce wins. We have to earn medals. We have to earn wins for matches, but we balance both because it's not all about winning. A lot of the times it's about growth for the child and it's about progression. And I always like to tell people that I think it takes at least 2 years of a real competitive grind, like a consistent, full, disciplined, competitive grind to really start putting up wins. So before we get to that point, we have to measure success in a lot of different ways.
And I would say that it's difficult for a child to comprehend the success versus winning thing. So that's why it's important that we have the parents on the same page. All they see is the trophy. All they see is the medal. That's all they really care about. So we have to be reiterating to them that success for you at this tournament is this goal, right? If it's your first tournament, show up, get to the match, and get through your first match. That's fine. And that seems like a low bar, but for a kid that's never competed, that's a high bar. So we have to keep reiterating that to the child, and it's important that the parents are helping the coaches, and we're all giving them the same message so that they don't get obsessed. I just have to win, right? If the success is based on, oh, we want you to work on this guard, we want you to work on this technique, and they do that, fantastic. If they're at a point in their career where, yeah, we do need them to win at this belt and at this age group, then yeah, winning would be the goal, but it's not necessarily always the goal. Success and progression is the primary goal, and it's important that we reiterate to that child as much as possible.
So thinking about that, we just talked about how success and winning aren't necessarily the same thing, and there are lots of ways to prepare for success. One of the things that we wanted to get into was some of the strange ways that parents might behave in trying to get success, or perhaps trying to win. Maybe there are strange ways to try to win. So some of the things that we have here listed are bounties, filming other kids, and scouting other kids. So perhaps Coach Vannessa, can you talk a little bit about some of the strange behavior that parents might exhibit?
Yeah, so one of the ones that we dealt with years ago, it only really happened once with one family, but it's something that we, obviously don't want to happen again, where, and it was in training and in tournaments, and it was bounties on other kids and their own child. So it was, they started with their child. They're like, hey, if you do this to this kid or you beat this kid in a match, I'm going to give you $5. Another one in a tournament sometimes that parents will do, they'd be like, we need to follow this kid around and try to beat this kid as much as possible. That's something that, we don't really welcome or we don't like. We have a tournament schedule. We want you to go to the tournament, fight whoever's there, gain experience, and then move on. We're not chasing certain kids and we're not worried about beating specific kids. Obviously, it's great if we happen to be at the same tournament and they get the match, then great, but we're not looking to travel far just for fighting specific kids. There's even sometimes the parents would go to other kids and say, hey, if you do this to my child, I'll give you $5, I'll buy you ice cream, right? We don't really like performance-based incentives because it puts a lot of pressure on the child unnecessarily. We like, did they try their best? Did they show up? Did they act appropriately? Did they show good sportsmanship? Did they support their teammates? That all earns some sort of incentive, Tell your child that if they did a great job, they tried their best, then take them for ice cream, but don't say, if you hit this move or you beat this kid or you do this to some child that you get some sort of incentive, because that just puts a lot of pressure on the child. And when it comes to scouting, us as coaches will handle that. I specifically mostly just watch the film from our children and the matches that they they have, and I see weaknesses, strengths that we need to build upon, weaknesses that we need to fix, technical, maybe some errors or strategic errors that we have to fix. I will watch matches from the Pan Kids of kids in the division that we're fighting. And that's just to get a kind of a gauge of like what they're doing, what the pace is like, just so we get ready. But I don't particularly want the parents doing it, because it's, I would never go scout and study or, put myself in a field that I don't have anything to do with. Like if my child one day goes to medical school, I'm not going to like, start telling them what skills and things that they need and, who's a better doctor than who. So I would never do that. So for jiu-jitsu, when it comes to a parent who is especially never trained, you're filming other kids, which is weird in itself, but you're also scouting other kids and telling your child how good this kid is and telling the coaches how good this kid is. And you could be wrong, and now you're just putting a lot of pressure on your child for now, it was a kid that they would have just beat and not remembered. And now they're really nervous about it for no reason, so any strange behavior that you've noticed?
Well, I will say with the scouting, I think one of the issues is that it shifts the focus from your game and your jiu-jitsu onto the other kids' jiu-jitsu, where when we're developing the kids, we want them to focus on advancing their game. And I know as an adult competitor, you may or may not agree, but I don't like scouting my people. My coaches know this.
I don't either, but I should.
My coaches know this, and most of my coaches will say, hey, here's the pertinent data. This guy's going to go for takedowns. This guy's going to do this. They'll give me the quick, spark notes, but I don't want to sit there and watch 50 of this guy's matches, because then I'm going to start focusing on his jiu-jitsu, and you get kind of caught up in that. So with the kids, we want them to focus on their game, performing their game to the maximum level. And when you start saying, oh, this kid won that, this kid won that, and it starts really putting a lot of stress and taking them outside and focusing on their game, which is what we want. And then as far as strange behaviors, like kind of similar to what Vannessa was saying about, I wouldn't comment on the medical field, right? If I wasn't in the medical field. One thing I don't like a lot is parents coaching. And we understand that you get emotional, you want to help your kids win, you want to do anything you can for your child, but like that's why we're there. We know a little bit about jiu-jitsu, we're going to tell them. So it's a little strange for a parent, especially a parent that's never ever trained, to be sitting there offering technical advice to the child. So generally, you should offer, support, encouragement, and allow us to do the technical advice.
And so we talked about the strange behavior, right? What parents might not be helpful for them. Can we talk a little bit about, what's the appropriate level of parental involvement? What Coach Mahoney talked a little bit about, giving the support. What are some other things perhaps that the parents can do to help the coaches from support?
So for sure, before the match, a couple of things that we're going to do, obviously, register for the tournament. Make sure the child is attending classes regularly so that they can get their training in for the tournament. And being aware of the child's weight class, so that when we get their day of, we don't find out that we're in a weight class too high or a weight class too low. So make sure those are the before, making sure that we're having everything we need before the day of the tournament. And then on the day of the tournament, making sure that the kid is there with the uniform, make sure the kid is there next to the mat at the correct times. Those times will change, and it's very hard for us as coaches to keep track of where each kid's going to be. So that's kind of a parent duty to be like, hey, coach, we're over here on mat 12 at 2 o'clock. All right, cool, thanks. And then during the match, offering encouragement, like I said, not technical support. And then afterwards, hey, good job, whatever it is. And then not being too hard on the kid, whether they win, lose, draw, and allowing the coaches to talk to them when the time is right about the technical improvements that they can make.
Yeah, we clearly define the roles and responsibilities of each party. So we have the coach's roles, the child role, and the parent's roles. And as long as really there's not like stepping on toes, like I would never tell a parent how to parent their child. I don't have kids and I don't know the nuances of having to, raise children and all of that. So I would never tell you, I'm like, hey, I think they need to do this. I would never do that. So I would expect that same courtesy of, if I'm coaching and, I've been coaching for 11 to 12 years now, and I've run the kids program since I was 19. So I've had, a lot of experience in the field of coaching and things. And I'm not perfect, of course, but, for the most part, I know what's going on. I'm aware of modern jiu-jitsu. I compete myself. So as long as there's not, stepping on toes and crossing roles and things like the same, if a child is coaching another child, I'll let them know, hey, I know you're trying to help, but I'm the coach, so, I'll give checks to the children as well. And even the children know jiu-jitsu, they're pretty good at it. But even I tell them like, hey, I'm the coach, I'll handle it, that type of thing. And I'll tell kind of my personal story. I started jiu-jitsu when I was 13 and my mom brought me to my first class. And she watched maybe 20 minutes of a 60-minute class, went to the lobby, and never came to a practice to watch ever again. which was fine with me. You know, she was busy. She had to work a lot. So she came to my first class, watched 20 minutes, walked out, sat in the lobby. I met her out there and she never came back. You know, she's maybe been inside this gym handful of times, you know, since I've been here in 2011. It's 2023 now. She did, though. She would take me to all the tournaments. She would sign me up, you know, make sure I was registered. She'd help me if I had any weight issues. She would take me to the tournament. She'd be there. Never made any comments about my strategy. You know, every time I came off the mat, she was always like, good job. Or she would even ask me questions about what's going on. Because she was like, you know, what was that? Was that legal? Is that okay? So for her, with, you know, with involvement for me, you know, I'm a black belt world medalist now. My mom never tried to tell the coach what to do. She never coached me in what to do. Like I said, she's watched 20 minutes of my practice of all time. And she stopped even coming to tournaments with me when I was 16, really. You know, I was 16, I started catching rides with other people, and then I started doing tournaments on my own. You know, she did get to come to the Worlds, but even at the Worlds, she wasn't telling me what to do. She wasn't coaching me. She was just like, are you okay? Do you need anything? You know, that's the biggest thing with parental involvement, you know. So it's a good balance, like when it's too much or not enough. I think it depends on the child. I didn't need a whole lot of parental support. Some children need a little bit more, but as long as you know, we're not stepping on toes and crossing the streams of roles, then I think that it's appropriate. And, you know, the coach will let you know if they feel like you're a little bit, you know, stepping over, or maybe if we need you to do a little bit more, we'll try to communicate and let you know.
And so on that point, Coach Mahoney talked about the parental role of perhaps getting the children ready for the tournaments with things like weight, and touch on it a little bit. So can we talk a little bit about weight? So for children's jiu-jitsu, I guess how big of an emphasis is there on weight? How do we track that? What's the approach that you would suggest as a coach?
I don't particularly condone kids losing a lot of weight. I think now there's a difference between a child who eats like Takis and hot dogs every day. Like, yes, you can lose some weight. You know, I've had kids lose up to, you know, 9 to 15 pounds before, but it's just because, you know, their diet is like Takis and candy and sugar and soda. And that's just, it's literally like, cut that stuff out, eat clean for a little while, you know, and then you lose the weight. But I don't agree, you know, until parents put their kids in saunas and hot tubs and making them run, like, that's going to burn your child out so quick. You know, we do have a nutrition guide on the Google folder for the kids, and it just kind of goes through all the different food groups that I think are important, so like fats, carbs, protein, fruits and veggies, all of that, and it'll give you a little bit of insight. And it has a lot of examples of like what you should feed your child, what's good snacks, what'll keep them full, what'll keep them energized, and we kind of tell you what to avoid. Even alternatives. There's now, you know, nowadays there's so many different alternatives for like no carb or low carb things. Candies now, like I like the Unreal candies because they're very like low in calories and low in fat. So like I'll eat those as a sugar to cure a sugar crave. So, but we don't like kids cutting a lot of weight. You know, if obviously, like I said, if they're eating candy and Takis all day, if they eat clean for a couple weeks, then they could lose a lot of weight. But other than, you know, the bounds of just eating clean and bringing them to practice, I don't condone any other measures other than that.
And I'd also say, like, you know, being in jiu-jitsu and even more so in mixed martial arts, there's a big misconception between cutting weight and losing weight. Those are two different things. So generally, we don't want the kids cutting weight. And when I say cutting weight, I mean like Vannessa said, sauna, starvation, you know, manipulating your sodium levels, all these crazy things that we do in mixed martial arts. Like, we're not going to be doing that with kids. But there is definitely something to be said about training regularly and eating healthy. You will lose weight, and that's in a healthy way. So by no means do we want any weight cutting, but we also want to be aware of where we're at so that we can get into the proper division and just kind of track it over time and but without putting pressure. That's the biggest thing. We don't want there to be a bunch of pressure of like, hey, you got to lose 5 pounds in a week. That's where it kind of gets very toxic and negative, and we just want to stay away from that.
Yeah, I guess the difference between cutting and losing is losing weight is just doing the proper channels, and essentially the weight you get down to is what you can stay at.
Right.
Obviously, if you lose a lot of weight, then you go and like feast on KFC and pizza. You're going to gain weight back. But cutting is you're trying to get your body down to a weight it's normally not at. So you like for cutting weight, you're trying to cut below what you've been, and it's expected that you bounce back. Because like if you look at UFC fighters, MMA fighters, you guys cut a lot of weight, and you literally spend 24 hours rehydrating back up to a certain weight. So that's what we're talking about, is like losing a lot of weight just to gain it back, or cutting a lot of weight just to gain it back, versus just losing a little bit, maybe getting the child or even the athlete to an optimal weight. And losing weight is not, you know, when we say losing weight, we don't want them to get as low as possible. We just, you know, whatever, if they're 1 pound over for a weight class and we have 2 weeks, of course, we're going to say, hey, have them drink a lot of water, eat healthy. I'm sure they'll lose the pound and they might even stay there. But kids are also growing, so that's something that you have to be aware of. Is you don't want a growing child to be starving, sitting in a sauna, cutting a whole lot of weight. Especially, the more they do that, if you're doing that before they're even an adult, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's gonna be detrimental to your development for sure.
Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up on the weight tracking. There are competitions that have different weigh-in procedures. Can you touch a little bit about what parents might expect about, if children have to weigh in with the gi or without the gi, and perhaps can you list the examples?
So IBJJF, you're gonna have to go with the gi. Most of the regular, local tournaments like Naga Grappling Industries, those you can weigh in when you first get there without the gi. And I actually had a funny instance at the last tournament where I asked one of the kids, I said, hey, go ahead and take your stuff off. He's like, what? So, come with some shorts or something on underneath, because obviously if you're weighing in your jacket and your jeans and your shoes and everything, it's going to give you a disadvantage because it's going to bump you up to the next weight class. So have some shorts or something underneath so that you can, get down to whatever you're comfortable wearing and have the least amount of, closing weight to bring your weight up.
Yeah, for especially IBJJF is definitely different. And the reason that for the varsity competition team, we require that the child does another IBJJF within the calendar year, just so that they understand it's the same process, same type of system, but a lot different energy, but they would get a little bit of practice. And it is a science to the timing, like me as a black belt, I've been doing IBJJF tournaments since 2015, so about 8 years, if that math makes sense. And I've really gotten the timing down. So for me now as a black belt, like what they do is there's a list of matches, and it's like the green is the match that's going, then the 2 yellows are on deck, then there's 2 oranges. When your name is at the bottom of that list of 5, then you can weigh in. So me as a black belt, I have it on lock. I know as soon as my name's on the screen, I'm going, because usually for me, I do have to cut weight. Most of the time I'm dieting, but especially for the last couple of pounds, I probably was in the sauna, had to cut a little bit, had to drop a little bit of water. So I know as soon as I go, I take off, and then hopefully I get, the full 50 minutes. But for the kids, it's not that much time. So for the kids, the matches are 2 to 3 minutes, maybe even 4. And so for them, it's maybe 20 minutes that they get to rehydrate. So it is a lot about timing, where if the child did have to, have an unexpected weight cut, or you had to do something extreme, you get them in the bullpen as soon as possible. You have to get your gi checked, then you walk to a table, you weigh in, then you get to go to the real bullpen where they'll call you out. And then you get some time to rehydrate, stretch, warm up. But usually at the locals, you just wait in the line, you weigh in as soon as you get there, and then you're good for the whole day, of course. And you have, the kids usually have more than an hour, if not, sometimes they even get up to 2 to 3 hours to eat, nap, rehydrate. So the tournaments are different. So if you're not sure about what the weigh-ins look like at a tournament, just make sure you ask the coach, and usually they'll also have it on the website for the different tournaments. But those are really just the 2. The official IBJJF, you have to weigh in your gi, in your belt, 5 matches before you're about to go, no matter what time you're going. And then Naga and Grappling Industries are those locals. Usually you can even weigh in the night before on some of those.
Yeah.
But generally you wait in the line, you weigh in the morning, and then you're good for the whole day.
And it's like you said, it's such a big jump from those 2 that your first IBJJF should literally be about just seeing
learning how the system goes.
Don't put a lot of pressure on the first IBJJF, because it's literally just okay, this is how the weigh-ins work, this is how the bullpen works, and they'd walk me out. So I would definitely say take the pressure off for that transition from local tournaments to your first regional IBJJF.
And that brings up a good transition to one of the topics of levels of competitions and the expectations. So right now we just talked about how to track weight and the differences between local and perhaps regional. So can we, for the parents who might not know, can we iterate for them the levels of competition and perhaps set some expectations for what that's like?
Mm-hmm. So we essentially are looking at 4 levels of competition, and the bottom would be the in-house tournament. And every year we try to hold an in-house tournament here, and it's for all kids of all levels. Generally, we see a big boost in white belts that will do it. Kids who are never competed before but want to try it out. The registration fee is significantly reduced. When you go to other tournaments, you're looking at anywhere from $89 to $150 to register, and at our in-house, we usually charge about $50. And it's here, so it's generally going to be with kids that they've trained with all the time. Now that we have the other locations that are training, it is nice because we get Always Mills kids, Sabrina Park kids, and Elkridge kids all fighting. At this last in-house, we had a lot of white belt divisions and a couple gray belt divisions, so it was good. In the past, we've even had, yellow, orange, and green belt divisions. So the in-house is the lowest. We usually just hold it here. We'll invite some schools we're friendly with, and it's a very low stress environment where there's not too much cheering, not too much yelling. The kids get to have a good time. We play music. We do fun super fights and all that stuff. It's a lot of fun. The next level, which some kids skip the in-house, and even at all levels of competition, the kids will go back to the in-house. But the next we're looking at is a local, which is usually just Nagas, Grappling Industries, and those are the two main ones we do. In the past, we've done like Copa Novas, remember those?
Yeah, I remember Copa Nova.
Fuji, BJJ,
Classic.
all those types of good fights, all those different types, and those are just generally within about a 3-hour driving distance. Recently, all of them have been within about 2 hours. We usually go to Pennsylvania and Virginia. Sometimes we'll go to Jersey. Rarely we will go to Virginia Beach. So those are don't have to fly to them, usually about 3 hours of driving, average about an hour and a half driving near us. And those are, like I said, just the kids in that area. Kids also trying to get a boost, but there are like a lot of high level kids that will do those too, just to get practice. Next, you're looking at a regional, which is the IBJJF in a certain city. So I would consider Jiu-Jitsu Con in Vegas, we go every year, Atlanta's. There are other ones we haven't been able to make, but they do the Chicago's, Dallas's, anything that is a city that IBJJF runs are regionals, and we look for those, and the child has to be at least a gray belt to do those because they don't do white belts for IBJJF. So it's gray belt and up, and we generally would talk about as you're going up in the tiers of competition, you generally have to win the one before, right? So in order to qualify for a regional, the child would have had to at least win 1 gold, preferably double gold in their belt that they're competing in. So if a child wants to do the Atlanta Open at gray belt, they would have had to double gold at a regional at gray belt to even be qualified to go. And that doesn't even guarantee a win. That's just minimum. If they're not winning at the locals, shouldn't go to a regional. Then the next level is international, which would include Brazil's. We sent a couple kids to Brazil last year. Europe, if we were to ever get to do that, I think they just had European kids last weekend. They usually do the European kids later in the year. And then Pan Kids, which is, like I said, the tournament that kids from all around the world come to. So those are the 3. And like I said, if they want to do an international, they would have had to win a regional at their belt level that they're competing at. Now, of course, sometimes the kids skip tiers. Like if the kid just cannot make it to a regional, as long as they're winning locals consistently, we will let them do an international because that just requires a lot of travel, a lot of planning, especially going out of the country. Pan Kids is a little bit easier, but it is tougher because, like I said, kids from all around the world are coming to that tournament. So we're looking at in-house. Sometimes the kids skip the in-house or never do one, and that's fine. Then we're looking at local. All the kids compete at locals. Anytime a regional comes around, rarely, maybe twice a year average, they can go to those if they've been winning. And then we're looking at international, which is like Brazil, Europe, and then the Pan Kids. And for the Pan Kids, we do have our JV and varsity requirements that for the people who have been invited to that, you've seen what they are. And those are just the bare minimum of how much you need to train and compete in order to even be successful. And it's, again, it doesn't guarantee success. It's just the minimum that we require for us to be able to really work with the child to be able to win.
So as there are different levels of competition and different expectations, one of the things that it might be interesting to hear about is the coach's responsibilities on those. I'm assuming that the stakes would be different between in-house, local, regional. But can you talk about perhaps the parent's responsibility of just letting the coach be the coach, especially as they might be investing more money as they go to these higher tournaments? How can do you have any advice for letting the coach take responsibility for the technique and just letting the parents?
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing when you do see the parent go like, "Hey, go talk to your coach. Like, go ask him like what needs to be done." And that's real easy because it gives you that that third party validation of like, oh, even dad says I should ask the coach what to do, right? Because the kid doesn't kid kind of idolizes the parents. And so if you told them something, they would probably listen. They would be like, oh, wow, my dad knows jiu-jitsu, right? So it is really nice when I see the parent go like, hey, go ask your coach what to do. And it gives me that validation. The other one is definitely just, like I said before, I can't stress it enough. Just don't offer technical stuff. Just anytime there's a technical question from the child, say, hey, I think your coach would be a better person to answer that. And then, like I keep saying, just give them that encouragement. Hey, you did a great job. Because we don't want to put undue pressure. Most kids I find will put a lot of pressure on themselves. They're like, I gotta win, So we just want to say, hey, we're proud of you. You did a great job. And then all technical stuff should be from us.
Yeah, it becomes very disruptive when a parent, we have a system, almost like a recipe that we know that works. Like we have Pancake Champions. Again, it's not perfect. As the years go on and Jiu-Jitsu evolves, we have to adjust it, but we are on top of adjusting it and changing it for, that's why we developed the JV and varsity program so that people understand what we're expecting, because it was getting exhausting being like, hey, I need you here. I need you here. I need you to be training. I need you here. I need you to be training. I see a kid once a week, but they're competing every other month. And I'm like, what is going on? Why are you doing that? So when we talk about letting the coach be the coach, it's essentially just let us do what we know works. Because anytime we have a parent try to go in and kind of mess with the system, it never turns out well. I've had conversations where parents want to tell me what weight class their child wants or should do, what techniques that they want to learn, the strategies and game plans that they want their child to have. And all those things are just disruptive to the point where it's like, sometimes I'm almost like, sure, let's do it your way and see how it goes. But then that's like, it's like I said, 2 years of a full disciplined, consistent, competitive grind. If I were to give any time to anybody else, like the parents, and say, hey, you can do this for this much time, like it's just going to set us back and it's going to be a problem, especially when the private lessons, I have parents who like tell me what they want me to do with their child. And it's like, I get where you're coming from and I understand, but it's honestly easier for you to just trust me than for me to have to explain why this works, because a lot of parents, they don't train jiu-jitsu. So I'll try to explain, I'll purposely go to some parents and I'll like explain the technical things that we did. And I just watch them be like, yeah. And I'm like, I know you have no clue what I'm talking about. And we had the coaches meeting where I was talking about it. I was like, yeah, if you want your child to, learn a barambola to a worm guard to a reverse triangle. And then I looked at the parents and they were all confused. I was like, yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please do not.
Don't coach.
Please do not try to coach your child, so it just makes it makes it stressful for the coaches too, because when the parents are putting a lot of, undue pressure on the child, the coach, and all this stuff to win, and they're like, I think this is better and this is better, it just becomes stressful. And it becomes really, honestly, it also sometimes becomes very difficult to work with the child, even though we like the kids a lot, we love working with them, but it sometimes makes it difficult when we have a parent like stepping on toes and telling, me what techniques that they should do. And, it's a lot of the times it's like kids don't do those techniques, sometimes, it's even hard to teach a child a triangle at a certain, limb level, because they can't even lock their legs right. So parents be like, I want my 5-year-old to, do MMA and learn a triangle. And I'm like, they don't even know how to walk in a straight line yet. And like that locking a triangle, they can't even do it yet. So there's a lot of things that we just have experience as coaches, watching matches, being at tournaments so much. Even us, like we have so much competitive experience that it's overwhelming, So it just like I said, it becomes stressful for the coaches. It becomes very difficult to work with the child because, there's things where I'll like teach a child something and they're like, oh, my dad taught me this way. And I'm like, okay, that's just, no, please stop,
and even the parents that have a limited like experience, they don't understand. Like, I think what you're getting at is there's a different approach for kids versus adults. There's kind of like a different technique set that you're able to teach to adults, and that you're able to teach the children. It's like a little less fine motor skills. So that even if you have an idea, you're a huge MMA fan, say, hey, they should be doing it this way. You're like, yeah, but certain things don't translate to kids as easily as you would think. And then even, you're saying, well, a lot of parents don't train. What's funny is one of my parents does train, and he does a great job of always saying, hey, while we're on Thanksgiving break, what should we be going over? Blah, 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 blah. And so he wants everything that he's talking to his child about to vibe with what we're doing in class. And so it's funny seeing someone that is a high-level jiu-jitsu person, asking the coach questions, but then parents that are not even white belts just offering unsolicited advice to the child.
Yeah.
So, but just take that as an example. The dad that I have that knows the most about jiu-jitsu does the best job of not overcoaching his kid, which, you might argue he could just coach his kid, but he's helping me to make sure that we're giving that child what they need to succeed.
Yeah, because even if he's right, but you're also right, it's like they're just going to clash. So the thing that he's doing is great because he's going to help his child within the bounds of what you're setting. Correct. So it's like your system could work really great, but he's like, maybe he does have another kid's system that works really great. And I'm like, but it's great. But if you're like, you're at home teaching your child this, but you're in the class teaching them this, it's a clash. And then it's going to make that process, it just always makes the process even longer. If you like, let us coach, like I said, within 2 years of a real competitive grind, like I said, that sounds like a long time, but in the grand scheme of jiu-jitsu, where it takes, the adult 8 to 10 years to get a black belt and a child twice as long that maybe starts when they're young, it does make a big difference, and all of that compounds.
Um, so now that we talked about letting the coach be the coach, one of I guess the two topics that I'd like to hear about would be um, how do we approach the topic of setting and reinforcing goals that come from the parent or that come from the coach, and then how do we make sure that the child or the student um, keeps on track, and what are some of the pitfalls that they might take? So I guess the first question would be, who sets goals, and or maybe what are some of the combinations of goal setting? Is it the student, the child makes their goals, or the parents, or the coach? And how do you make sure that they stay on track with that?
Child and coach. Child and coach should always work together to set goals. The child can also, they can create their own goals in their own time, obviously, but it's good to check it with the coach because sometimes the goals are perfect and we're like, great, that's your goal. That's awesome. How can I help you? Sometimes the goal is a little bit too low. If you have a yellow belt pancakes champion who's like, I want to win, a local at Orange, we're like, you're probably already at that level. Let's aim a little higher. Or there could be, a gray belt who's competing for the first time. His goal is right now green belt pancakes champion. And that's a great long-term goal, but we're like, okay, but what are the mini goals that are going to get us to that? So in the competition team contract, one of the parts that I put in was like, what is your goal for 2024? And then understand that the coach is going to help you according to that. So it was like local champion, regional champion, Grand Slam medalist, and then pancakes champion. Whatever they pick, I'm going to know that. They're going to write it in their planner. And we're going to set mini goals, each quarter, each month, each week, even to get to that point. So like I said, the goals for the child should be checked by the coach and then supported by the parent. So whatever goal that I think we decide upon, then we let the parent know. And then maybe if I need the parent to take them to this many tournaments, take them to this many practices, I will let the parent know. But the actual goal should be set by child first. Check it with the coach. Maybe the coach needs to break it down into small goals with you. Maybe the coach has to redirect the goal, or maybe the coach is going to give you a high five, great goal, and what can I do to help you? When the parent gets involved in that, it sometimes becomes the goal comes from the parent where they want their child to do this, but the child maybe necessarily doesn't want to do that, and the coach doesn't even think it's possible, or the goal is just not realistic, So communicating with the coach is very important too, because it lets us know kind of, where the child is, where they want to go, and it makes it very difficult when the parent kind of comes in and has their own agenda and things that they want to do. It just makes it very difficult, normally.
Yeah, and I'd say like with the parent helping to reinforce the goal. So I do think it's important that the parent understands, right? Once child and coach said it, parent helps reinforce. So if the kid said, I want to get this belt or I want to compete at this tournament, and then now it comes time to go to practice and the kid's not wanting to go to practice, that would be an opportunity for the parent to say, okay, well, you say you want to win this tournament, but we've trained once this week. You can't win that tournament only training once a week, right? And also having, the parents understand like what, goals and actions being congruent is, right? If we've set a lofty goal, but we're training once a month, that's just not congruent, right? So we want to make sure that whatever the goal is, that the actions that follow up are, going to help us get to that. And one thing that I've been doing is just helping right from my intro program, trying to get the kids starting setting goals. So I say, hey, what's the goals we're going to set for you to get to the AP program? When they set those goals and accomplish those goals, then they go to the AP program. It starts them right from the intro program, understanding that there is a direct correlation between goal setting and receiving, good things coming my way when I set the goal and followed through and achieved the goal. So I think goal setting is just super important, and having, big lofty goals that have all these little sub goals that funnel up to that big one. And yeah, so if your child has to come to us, I'm happily, any kid, come to me. I want to talk about goals. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then any parent that has questions, let me know, because I will absolutely let you know how you need to reinforce those goals with your child.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I guess to close it out, now that we've set these goals, and now that we have an agreement, I guess, between the child and the parent, or not, sorry, the child and the coach, how do we make sure, or I guess the question is, what are some of the complications or the problems, or what are some of the excuses that we might hear? How do we address that as parents, right?
So yeah, excuse making is something I don't really know. I think it comes from your desire to like protect and shield your child, right?
Sure.
So your child comes off the match and the first thing you want to say is, hey, that kid was a lot bigger than you, or hey, the table worker stopped the match 30 seconds earlier. If you had 30 more seconds, you would have beat that kid. And kind of making all these excuses. And what that does is it takes the focus again away from the kid's game, as I was discussing earlier, away from the kid's jiu-jitsu game and onto exterior forces. And it's just not productive for the child. So we want the child to focus on what he could have done or what she could have done to better optimize their jiu-jitsu during that match and win. Does that make sense? So when we start giving these exterior excuses, it's just not productive. So we want to say, hey, maybe we should have gotten an underhook. That's significantly more productive than saying, hey, that kid was way stronger than you, or, oh, you don't even train no-gi that much, or whatever strange excuse you want to give to make your child feel good. So it comes back to what I've been saying, which is that, you know, your job is just, hey, great job, we're proud of you, that kind of stuff, and to let the, you know, who, what, where, when, why of how we won, how we lost, and what we could improve on, just leave that stuff up to us.
Yeah, we have a 5-minute rule. So the parent is supposed to leave the child alone 5 minutes before the match to let them regulate, and then 5 minutes after, again, to let them regulate. And the big thing about competing that's very important is self-regulation, right? The child needs to learn how to focus themselves, get ready for their match by themselves, you know, because there might be times where you can't take them to the tournament. You know, there might be times where we are coaching, you know, 86 kids at one time and we can't get to them before the match. So that 5 minutes before of self-regulation is very important, right? And if you're, as a parent, or even, I mean, like I said, all these behaviors too, I've seen from coaches as well, like excuse making. You know, if a coach is like, hey, this kid is bigger than you, I just want you to do your best. You know, that already sets the child up for failure. You know, so like if a parent or a coach does it, or even other kids on the team, they're like, hey, this kid is so much better than you, he's so good, you know, just survive. You know, that stuff puts it in the child's head that they're supposed to lose, and, you know, they're more likely to give up. So in that 5 minutes before the match, they need to have some time for like self-talk, visualization, game planning, focus, and getting themselves ready. And then 5 minutes after, they need to regulate themselves. You know, if they won, great, don't celebrate too hard, but think about, you know, what you did great. I always, you know, when the kids lose, I always tell me one thing you did good. Tell me one thing you did well, you know? You know, and then they also have to be self-critical of like, what is one thing I could improve on? You know, not one thing I did horribly, not one thing I did bad, you know, no, I sucks or anything like that, but what is something that we just need to improve on? What's a question you might have for your coach? And that's why also filming the matches is very important in case the coach can't make it, because if we didn't get to see it, or even sometimes there's a lot going on. There was, I think, 158 kids matches at the last Grappling Industries. Like, there's no coach can retain that many matches of information. So it's good to film, but the excuse making does make it very difficult for us to address the real issue. The first thing they hear off the mat is an excuse. That's what's going to be in their head. And anything I try to tell them after that is the effectiveness is reduced by at least 50%, because, you know, how else, you know, they're just kids. They're just learning. How are they supposed to know what's, you know, acceptable, what's not, you know, what's good and what's not? You know, one of the bigger excuses I hear, especially from girls, is like, you know, 6-year-old girls, oh, that was a boy, he was bigger than you, stronger than you, or, you know, you fought a boy, it was whatever. And really at that age before puberty, it doesn't matter. You know, even honestly at a certain age, girls are hitting puberty faster. Right. So like probably at like 9 to 10 range, some of the girls are probably a little bit bigger, a little more advanced physically than some of the boys. So when it comes to kids, like, gender is irrelevant up to a certain point. And even honestly, I think girls have a little bit of an advantage for a little while before obviously the man sprouts, and, you know, it's over from there in the teenage years. But those are things that are really huge. You know, if the most powerful thing you can do for your, you know, girl athlete is let her know that, you know, I've seen girls win boys divisions all the time. It happens all the time. You know, I went to the last division, it was like a division of boys. There was one girl in one of the kids' divisions. She just blew through everybody. And it didn't matter that the division was boys, you know? So, you know, and that really puts a lot of, it kind of dampers your girl self-confidence too, because every time she's in the division with a boy, now she feels some type of way, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old. Obviously, when they're a teenager, it's appropriate to feel different, but those things are just very important. So when it comes to excuse making, even from the coach, like I've heard like wrestling parents, they talk to their coaches, and, you know, the coach is like making all the excuses, and the parent literally goes and be like, please don't talk like that to my son, because it's not productive. So, you know, with all of this, I think it sometimes can sound very negative, but we're not, you know, the best thing that we can do is all of us have a good relationship, right? So parent, coach, athlete, if all three of us are in line and sync, everything is great. You know, I've had some very great parents here who are 100% supportive, never gave me slack if their child lost. They were very supportive, very encouraging, helpful even. You know, they train themselves. Some of the parents here have been some of my best training partners, you know, so as, we're trying not to make this sound negative. We're just trying to kind of have like a cautionary tale of like how you can help your child, what you can do, and some of the red flags and things that we don't like that makes it very difficult for us to really help your child. And at a certain point, it just becomes too difficult to help them, So excuse making is one of those really big things that, again, yes, that's perfect. You are trying to protect your child. You're trying to help their ego, but really, it's better to let them eat the loss, talk to the coach, and then maybe afterwards, like, hey, I'm proud of you. You did your best. And that's it. That's all they need.
And with all this stuff, like I always try to make myself very available to the parents. So you get on the Slack, send me a DM. I'm more than happy to like help you understand anything we talked about today. And I want to help. I like my job. I did do this for a reason. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to approach me. But it will definitely be better if it's not during the middle of class. So that's why sometimes getting on the Slack.
Or in the middle of the tournament.
Or in the middle of the tournament where I'm running around to 12 different matches. So sending a DM on Slack is definitely a good way because then I can do it while I'm sitting down and relaxing and really give 100% focus to whatever your question or concern is.
Yeah, and if you ever, if there's an issue or something you disagree with us, please keep that to yourself and give us a warning of, hey, I need to talk to you, because we're also available for in-person. Slack is great for us because, like we said, we travel a lot. So if you have like an issue that needs to be addressed, I'm sometimes available for a phone call. I can Slack message. And then if we want to set up a meeting, I'm here almost all day. I basically live here. So I'm here a lot early. I'm here. Sometimes I'm available after. So if there's any issues or concerns or questions or disagreements that you have, please keep it away from the child. Please keep it away from other parents. Just keep it to yourself for now. Let's schedule a time to discuss it. I can explain my reasoning. And there honestly have been a rare occurrences where sometimes what the parent is saying makes a lot of sense, where I'm like, okay, I agree, that makes sense, and maybe we'll modify it to fit what we're talking about. So I'm not going to just shut you down. We're not going to say no to everything, but just understand that there are reasonings behind why we do a lot. Our program, I think, is focused a lot on longevity because it's such a complicated sport. There's so many positions to know. It is the most complicated sport. It's not like football and boxing and all those are very difficult. And I know there's a lot of nuances, but a lot of it is just very in depth of a certain, certain different things. But for jiu-jitsu, it's the child has to know a lot of different things. So it's stressful and overwhelming in itself. So, we're here as guides. Like I said, I've been competing for 12 years now, coaching for 12, been doing jiu-jitsu for 13. I have experience of all the highs and lows, all the competitive different things. I've coached athletes with different competitive challenges than me, and I've helped them through it. So I have a lot of experience. We have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge and things that we can explain to you in a way that maybe you didn't understand, or maybe we can come to some sort of agreement where we're like, okay, this is maybe a new path that we need to have. But that has to be a sit down, meted conversation where we sit and we discuss it and we hash it out. And that's really the best way to be able to do that, because if it's just, it's everyone's upset and everyone's stepping on toes, and it's a really tough situation, and it stresses a lot of us out.
Negative spiral.
Yeah, it's just a negative spiral, downward spiral. It makes it difficult on all parties, And if the parent and coach are disagreeing and it's made public, then that's very stressful for the child. I've had high level pancake champions, just amazingly technical, talented kids quit because their parent and me and their parent collided too much and clashed, and it was just we could never reach that mutual respect and understanding. So it's sad to see, but kids will just quit because they don't want to be in that every day. So it's something that we deal with. But like I said, like Coach Mahoney said, if you guys have any questions, please message us, message Coach Ronnie, let us know. Sometimes Coach Keith is even available. So if there's any issues you guys have, please let us know. Please talk to us about it. We're always open. We're always available. Very friendly. So anything you have to say or any disagreement, just let us know.
Okay. Thank you, Coach Vannessa, Coach Mahoney,
of course.
And Coach Ronnie will be on one of these soon. So for the parents, if they have any questions, reach out on Slack or contact you. Other resources might be on Google or whatnot, but they can get access to that if they sign up on Slack to stay in contact. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. See y'all later.